to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, the United Kingdom formally recognizes the State of Palestine.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer has kept his promise. But in Gaza, Israel is on the offensive.
والله إذا قالوا لي بدي أنزح مش عارف أول إشي مش عارف أنا وين أنا بدي أروح.
Israel faces accusations of a genocidal attack on Gaza's Palestinians, not just with high explosive, but by using food as a weapon of war.
If Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided that this famine would stop, he could stop it in a matter of 1, 2, or 3 days.
More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed around the new Israeli-controlled food distribution sites.
أجا الطلق ووقع على الأرض قعدت أزعق عليه يا عبد الله يا عبد الله.
And a whistleblower says he saw Palestinians under fire as they tried to get food.
Did you feel you were part of a humanitarian mission?
No, when I was there I felt like I was in an offensive military base on the front line.
Israelis and tourists can peer into Gaza's hellscape, not distant, but isolated by Israel from the world. The viewing platform is here in Sderot, one of the frontline communities targeted in attacks led by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023. On that day, Hamas killed 1,195 people and took 251 hostages. 48 Israeli hostages are still in Gaza, perhaps 20 are thought to be alive.
I have reported on lots of wars over the years. The best way to do it is to get to a place where you can talk to people. Now, what is unique for me about this war is that I haven't been able to do it. Why? Because Israel has closed the gates and not allowed reporters like me in there to report freely.
Almost all Gaza's population of more than 2 million has been displaced by Israeli military action. Because Israel won't let us enter Gaza to report freely on a catastrophic war that's intensified the mutual hatreds of more than a century of conflict, we commission local freelancers who are still able to operate on the ground. We review and verify the material we receive. Reporting from a distance is not the way we want to work, but given the constraints, we believe we found the best obtainable way to tell the story of how Gazans live and die.
جوزي طلع يجيب لنا مونة وأكل. استشهد جوزي في 2012 ل 2023 أول الحرب.
Reem's husband Amin was killed while out getting food, one of more than 65,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians, killed by Israel according to the Hamas-run health ministry. With her 2 children, Reem says she's been forced to move 5 times. She was filmed in a tent in Gaza City.
لما فقدته فقدت الظهر اللي إلي. حالياً أولادي معتمدين علي، أنا الأم والأبو، استند إلهم.
When the last ceasefire began on the 19th of January this year, Reem and 2 million others in Gaza had some hope. Food was coming in. But on the 2nd of March, Israel stopped all shipments into Gaza as ceasefire negotiations with Hamas were breaking down. 2 weeks later, Israel went back to war. The global body that assesses food emergencies, the IPC, now says that Gaza is in a famine.
About half of the Palestinian population can access enough food for bare survival, the most vulnerable. are way, way below what is necessary for them to survive from day to day.
هي المجاعة حالياً لسه ما انتهت والوضع لسه صعب علينا وعلى الكل. قبل الحرب كنت أوفر لأولادي أجيب لهم لحمة ياكلوا فواكه ياكلوا خضرة وياكلوا سمك. حالياً عايشين على المعلبات على العدس على التكية رز حاف.
It's very, very rare to have a famine that has an off switch, if you like. If Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided that this famine would stop, he could stop it in a matter of 1, 2, or 3 days.
Israel denies there's a famine. It calls the overwhelming evidence presented by the IPC an outright lie. Reem says her 10-year-old son has tonsillitis. When children are hungry and weak, ordinary childhood bugs can get worse.
شعور صعب لما تشوفي ابنك بده أو أنا كذلك ابني بيطلب مني أو بنتي بتطلب أنا صعب إني أوفر لها.
In May, international pressure forced Israel to let some food into Gaza. With US help, the Israelis came up with a new way to distribute it, establishing the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF. Israel claimed the existing UN aid system was ineffective, allowing Hamas to steal food. The UN denies that, insisting its shipments are monitored and traceable. Israel, it says, has not provided evidence of systematic theft. Unlike the UN, the GHF works out of sites secured by American armed security and the Israeli military, the IDF. Aid deliveries restarted through 2 crossings, Zikim and Kerem Shalom. Israel stopped deliveries through Zikim on the 12th of September.
It's not far past 6 o'clock in the evening, and here at the Kerem Shalom crossing point, well, nothing's happening. The only activity I can hear is coming from inside Gaza, and it's explosions. There's one just then. What I have found here, there are a couple of boxes of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation provisions.
The UN and its partners used to distribute humanitarian assistance at 400 sites across Gaza. They've been largely replaced by 3 GHF sites in the south and 1 in the center of the Gaza Strip. Site 1 closed after 3 weeks. With so few sites, hungry civilians, many who've walked all night through active combat zones, face a free-for-all when they open. And a lot of them leave empty-handed.
Complete, total chaos every day. This was the feeling.
We spoke to an IDF soldier who served at a base overlooking GHF aid sites during the summer. He's still a reservist, so we're protecting his identity and calling him Michael.
Every day we had a different hour of opening. So Palestinians came in random hours looking for food, and there was no food to give them.
Until July, GHF announced its opening and closing times on social media. We've analysed them and found the longest they say a site was open was 46 minutes, but the average was 12. Lawyers for GHF told us they can open for up to 5 hours, depending on safety.
I think it's hard to understand how low we degraded, like common, regular people, to a state of that much like hunger and frenzy about food.
Michael says they were ordered to fire warning shots when they wanted to hold back the crowds.
Is your concern that if you needed to get a message over to the Palestinians, a lot of the time the only way you could do it was by shooting?
Yes, it concerned me a lot because The moment they won't listen to the shots, they'll start running at us. And then we need to decide what we're doing with 1,000 people on the way to the base.
And he says they had a system to decide when and where to shoot, which was not communicated to Palestinians.
You have an imaginary line, you have a green one, you have a red one. In the green one, you shoot a warning shot, so they will understand that this is a no-go zone and they need to turn back. In the red one, it's too close, it's too dangerous, and then you use lethal force.
But that never happened when you were there.
By luck, I think. It sometimes felt like it's planned so badly that you can't believe it's not on purpose.
When you have only 3 or 4 facilities operating for a fixed number of hours a day with a very limited supply of food, and you require, in an atmosphere of absolute desperation, individuals to queue in an orderly fashion, and you surround the facilities distributing the aid with an extremely heavy kinetic military presence, you're going to get exchanges, you're going to get violence.
The GHF refused our request to film at one of its sites. Its lawyers say the IDF chooses their locations. The IDF didn't address our questions about Michael's account of red and green lines. It says it's learnt lessons after civilian harm was reported at aid sites and that updated instructions were passed to its forces.
طبعا هذه غرفة عبد الله، تفضل أهلا وسهلا. كان يلزق صور، أنت شايف كيف؟ أنا نجم بس ما فيش سمك. كان بيحلم من 95%.
Dia lives in central Gaza with his wife and children. 19-year-old Abdallah's bedroom is empty.
كان يجي ينام هنا. هذه شنطته. الشنطة المدرسية. حبيبي يا أبو. عرق ولسه ضايل فيها. الله يرحمك يا أبو، يغفر لك يا أبو، يتوب عليك يا أبو إن شاء الله. في عليين. إن شاء الله رب العالمين في عليين.
On the 2nd of August, Abdallah went to GHF Site 4 because the family needed flour.
فقال لي يابا بدي اروح، هذا قبلها بليله. قلت له بالله يابا الله يرضى عليك، والله ما انا حابب تروح بكره، فخلص افدي وما تروحش. قال لي ان شاء الله بصير يشيل لك كل خير يابا. عبد الله صديق طفولتي وجاري يعني.
Muaz says he went with Abdallah to the aid site.
مشينا على الطريق اللي قالوا لنا عليه يمشوا فيه الجيش الإسرائيلي. وصلنا عند دار مهدومة، قعدنا فيها جنبها.
It was a long wait. Muaz says Abdallah walked 30 meters away to deal with a call of nature.
أجا طلق ووقع على الأرض، قعدت أزعق عليه يا عبد الله يا عبد الله. وكان عبد الله يعني بطلع في الروح، فجريت لعنده وكان يعني في اطلاق نار. انا عرضت حالي وجريت عليه بسرعه بين اطلاق النار. فيعني كان اخر الطلق يعني 10 دقائق كان روحه طلعت يعني.
Based on Muaz's testimony, this is where Abdallah was killed. Less than 500 meters from the aid site, just in front of a bridge that leads to the entrance. Abdallah was shot at 8 a.m. We've analyzed the time and location data embedded in this video, which was later posted on social media. It was taken just 50 minutes after Abdallah was shot. It reveals the exact point where these people were under fire, just 135 meters from where Abdallah was killed. They're taking cover behind this sandbank, suggesting the fire is coming from the direction of the GHF aid site. The whole area is under Israeli military control.
انها تاخذ المساعدات. حاولت اني اخلي الناس حدا يعني يشيله معي، فكله كان يجري لانه كانت يعني كله كان يجري جوا النقطة. فبالفعل لقينا تاع كارة.
A passerby filmed as they took Abdullah's body to hospital. He was one of 18 people killed that day near the aid site, according to data gathered by ACLED, a group funded, among others, by the UN, the US, and European governments. We asked the IDF specifically about the death of Abdullah. It didn't respond, but told us it does not deliberately fire at innocent civilians. GHF's lawyers say its security contractors don't either. They also say they're not aware of any credibly documented instance of their ever doing so, and that no one has been shot dead at a GHF site or within sight of one.
أنا ضحيت بابني البكر الكبير عشان يطعم أخوته وخواته وأبوه وأمه. هذا هو شعوري. طبعا شعور صعب جدا انك انت تحس حالك انك انت اللي قتل ابنك، انت اللي وديت ابنك لمصائد الموت. ولكن احنا كنا محتاجين هذه المساعدات. كنا محتاجين هذه المساعدة.
Unfortunately, even the dead people in Gaza doesn't have this rest in peace.
Taufik Omar is an NHS vascular surgeon just back in the UK from Gaza. In August, Taufik was based at Nasser Hospital, only a few kilometers from the two southern GHF sites.
You can see literally the patient is just on the floor everywhere. The blood is just covering all the floor, and the smell of the blood is unbelievable, intolerable.
Taufik says that after the aid sites opened each day, the hospital was overwhelmed with casualties.
Most of the time, I experienced very complicated, very devastating injuries being carried out from the GHF points miles away on just a wooden pallet, dragged in their blood, and they are just bleeding all the way. You can trace their way to the hospital through this bleeding. Most of the days, you have like 10 to 12 vascular injuries. I can say with confidence that more than 90% of those injuries has been reported to be due to gunshots.
Since the GHF began its operations, at least 1,300 Palestinians have been killed at or around its sites, mostly, according to ACLED data, by IDF fire. Across Gaza, Palestinians were being killed seeking aid in the year before GHF arrived, at an average rate of 30 per month. Since its sites opened, that's risen to 500. The IDF says it's not aware of hundreds of fatalities caused by its forces at distribution points. It says these figures are inflated and false.
Were you able to tell who was doing the shooting?
The local people coming from the GHF points are saying clearly that they can see the GHF security guards or the IDF personnel is shooting directly at the crowds.
My job was being a truck driver delivering aid into the different sites in Gaza.
We've been speaking to a whistleblower who's worked at all the GHF sites. Because he's worried about his safety, we're protecting his identity and calling him John. He was so shocked by what he was seeing that he filmed it secretly. John says people gathered outside the sites before they opened, trying to get ahead in the deadly race for food.
What would you be hearing?
At the beginning, we would start hearing sporadic gunfire when the locals would start kind of forming up around the edges of the sites. We were basically under a constant background noise of gunfire. That would be from the nearby IDF bases, as well as from the actual UG Solutions personnel, and they'd often shoot at the same time as the IDF.
GHF employs subcontractors. An American company, UG Solutions, runs security, using former US Special Forces soldiers. John worked for a logistics company.
Could you tell who was shooting at who?
Yes, because it's like the IDF, like they were shooting from larger caliber weapons.
Could you tell what they were shooting at?
The background is a civilian area, so there was just apartment buildings, streets, and they are shooting at that.
This is one of John's videos. We're not revealing the exact date to help protect his identity. It shows rapid gunfire. We've used the time and location data embedded in this video to establish that it was filmed here at aid site number 4. You can see these white tents here on this satellite image and in John's video. Based on the sound and the angle of the visible gunfire, our analysis suggests it comes from this IDF position, identified from satellite images, just behind the GHF aid site, and that the gunfire is aimed towards this area in front of the aid site, where videos posted on social media show crowds often gathering, waiting for it to open. In the darkness and danger, it can take hours to get to the nearest hospital, which is Al Auda, 2.5 kilometers away. This footage of its emergency room was filmed soon after John recorded shooting at GHF Site 4. On that day, more than 20 people were killed near the site, according to ACLED. The IDF says its rules of engagement strictly prohibit the intentional targeting of civilians.
You were in an area that was secured by these American security people. What was their mood?
If they were talking about the Palestinians, it would be bastards. It would be. There was no mention of the civilians. It was always a derogatory term. A lot of the Americans seemed to be quite jubilant when the shooting was intensifying.
What do you mean by that?
Cheering. Stuff like, hell yeah, whenever there was a confirmed hit.
UG Solutions says it does not tolerate bigoted or unprofessional behavior, and those who have not acted professionally were terminated. It says it does not shoot at nor use any lethal weapons against local Gazan aid seekers. After more than a month in Gaza, John decided he'd had enough.
Did you feel you were part of a humanitarian mission?
No, when I was there I felt like I was in an offensive military base on the front line.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant, accusing them of the war crimes of murder, persecution, and using starvation as a weapon. The ICC also issued warrants for Hamas leaders, who were all subsequently killed by Israel. War crimes investigations continue.
We have had clear evidence of hundreds of people being killed trying to get access to these sites, and mostly by Israeli military, which is totally unacceptable. And that is a very grave breach, not only of international humanitarian law, but also international human rights law. It is extremely important that those who commit war crimes, those who commit crimes against humanity, are held to account. They need to be brought to justice.
Israel denies all allegations of war crimes, which it says are based on anti-Semitism. The Israeli ambassador in London declined to be interviewed for this film. The embassy directed us to the IDF. They too didn't want to be interviewed, but provided written responses included in this program. Israel says the new offensive that's destroying Gaza City will deliver its elusive final victory over Hamas. The UK government says the offensive is utterly reckless and appalling. Once again, Shifa, Gaza City's battered main hospital, is dealing with dozens of casualties. The doctors told us that it takes so long to rescue the wounded and get them to Shifa through shelling and airstrikes that they often can't do much more than watch them die. Israel is using such intense firepower that civilians who've spent 2 years refusing to leave their homes are now being forced to flee.
לתושבי עזה, אני מנצל את ההזדמנות הזאת ותקשיבו לי טוב. ראו, הוזהרתם. צאו משם.
Forcing Gazans south suits the plan pushed by Netanyahu's hardline allies to seize the Gaza Strip for Jewish settlers and force Palestinians out. One extremist leader in the Israeli cabinet predicted a real estate bonanza. 2 new GHF sites are being built in the south, not enough for the people there already, let alone all the civilians Israel is forcing out of Gaza City.
هالحين احنا لنا سنتين في الحرب، متشردين، تعبانين، نفسيتنا تعبانة، ما فيش نظافة، جوع، تشريد. والله إذا قالوا لي بدي أنزح، مش عارف، أول إشي مش عارف أنا وين أنا بدي أروح.
If it's proved that Israel is committing acts with the intent to destroy Gaza's Palestinians as a group in whole or in part, then genocide will be added to the list of war crimes that the whistleblower John and many others say that they've witnessed.
I just don't understand how people who might not have even been there are saying that what I saw doesn't exist. I wish it never happened, but I saw it. I had to deal with this at the time, and I'm still dealing with the repercussions.
Unfortunately, every day the patient is asking you to save him, and you'd like to say to him, sorry, if you are in another world, I might be able to save you.
نحن في قطاع غزة هنا الناس مسالمين. عبد الله شاب زي كل هالشباب، الله يرحمه، ما حققش ولا أي حلم من حياته.
Last month, when Israel was planning the current offensive, the world body that had already determined the existence of famine in Gaza issued a warning. Intensified military action and the forced relocation of already fragile civilian populations would make the famine in Gaza significantly more severe. That is now the risk